Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. Welcome to our webinar this afternoon, brought to you by My Main Street on creating systems and process to manage your business. And I was running a little workshop this morning with a group of people, and one of the things that I said, which I really believe, is that sometimes business owners are too busy to be successful. And this is something that every single one of us need to be very, very careful of, because sometimes we do a lot. We're busy, we're doing stuff, but it's not taking our business forward. And this is something you've got to be very, very careful of. And I've seen some people with great ideas, with great businesses fail just because they just disorganized. They have no structure, they have no processes. And I think that for some of you, what I'm going to share with you this afternoon could really change your life, and more importantly, change your business. And for some of us, our life and our business is basically the same thing. For those of you that haven't met me before, my name is Andrew Patricia, and I've always been a business owner. So for the last 30 or so years, I've run my own business. But for the last 25 years, I've been educating, training, and trying to inspire business owners to build profitable businesses. And often this is one of my favorite topics. I mean, I have a few favorite topics, but this is one of my favorite. And the reason is that personally, I think this has changed my life. It's changed the way I do things. Because to be honest with you, I was not always the most organized person. And I think it's also sometimes comes from what industry you're in, sometimes comes from a personality, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But the reality is that you and I have got limited hours in the day. So if we've got structure, if we're organized, if we have those type of things, our chances of succeeding are much better. And the customer also feels this, because they walk into a business that's well merchandised, that is, clean, that the employees are well trained, they know what they're doing. All of these things influence our business model. And I want you to understand that it's sometimes the simple things, not the big things that make a difference in business. It's sometimes the simple things. And I believe that some of the things that we do that I'm going to share with you today are very, very simple, but they're very, very effective. And that's the part I want you to understand. So for some of you, you're going to adopt some of the ideas I give you today, and it's going to improve your business. The other thing I like saying to people is, very, very often you and I will attend a workshop or we'll attend a seminar or webinar, and it's very, very interesting. We'll listen to the presenter, and maybe we'll agree with the presenter, not everything, but we'll agree with a lot of things that the presenter says, or some things that the presenter says, and then we go back to our business, and then we just carry on the same way. I'm going to encourage you after this webinar to try some of these things. Whether you agree with all of them or not, I encourage you to try some of these things because it'll really influence your business going forward. So that's the first thing. The second thing, which is a very, very big problem in North America, is that a lot of the business owners in North America are getting much older. And because they're getting much older, one of their strategies is to sell their business. Well, it should be. Every one of us on this webinar this afternoon, one day, we're probably going to want to sell our businesses. And if you're organized, if you have systems, if you have processes, if you have ways that you do things, the chances of you selling that business are much better. And that is always one of my goals as a business owner. If I need to sell my business one day, how do I hand it over to these people so they can run it just as well or even better than me? But it starts with the really simple things, the really, really simple things. And one of the things I learned early on in business, and especially when I started training business owners, is that if you want to build a successful business, what you need to do is you need to come up with processes, you need to come up with systems, you need to come up with ways that you can become more effective, so that you can become more productive, so that you can improve your marketing, all of these things. And so what you want to do is you want to develop systems, you want to develop process, you want to develop tools that make your life easier. And sometimes it's a simple thing. This morning, I was running a workshop, a live workshop with a big group of people, and I was using some really cool templates. I think they're cool anyway, for creating cash flow forecasts and calculating break-even points and working out the profit on each product. And people said we'd like those templates, and it was really simple for me. I got back to the hotel. I just sent an email, created a link to it, sent them all the stuff. It makes me look efficient, even if I'm not efficient. It just makes me look efficient because I made a promise to the client. I delivered it in a very, very simple, easy, effective way to use, and it made me look more professional. And I think sometimes in small business, we just don't look the part, or we don't act the part. And the reason is because we do things differently each time. There's no consistency. So sometimes I'll come into your business and you do things this way, and then other times I'll come into your business and you do things a little bit differently. And people like consistency. And the reason I know people like consistency is that's why the franchise industry is so successful. Last night I was with one of my sons, and he'd eaten earlier in the evening, and then he was hungry, and he said, where can I go? And I mean, I don't eat McDonald's, and I didn't eat McDonald's, thank goodness, but that's where he went. And why did he go to McDonald's? Not because the food's good, but because he knew what to expect before he walked into the store. So that's the first thing. And secondly, it's consistent. And for a consumer or a customer, it's very comforting when you go into a store, or you go to a website, or you go to a business, or you buy a service, and the service, the service levels and the product and all of that are consistent. It's like anything. If you buy, for example, baked bread regularly, or you buy any confectionery, or if you buy, I don't know, stuff that you buy regularly, if it's not consistent, it worries you a little bit. You start thinking, something's going on here. Or even maybe you've said this over the years, you've always bought from a local bakery, and all of a sudden they change things. Maybe management has changed, or whatever it is, and you can feel it straight away. And it's a little bit stressful for some people. So what you want to try and do is you want to create consistency, you want to create consistent recipes, you want to do things, the good things, you want to do them over and over again really, really well. And I'm going to share with you, how do you do that? Because I've worked with so many really successful businesses over the last 25 years, the one thing that I've learned is that the most successful business owners I work with start off their days very, very simple. They sit down and they plan every single day. And it really becomes a routine. I'm, for example, going tomorrow morning at 6:30, which is absolutely ridiculous. I'm going to start walking at 6:30 tomorrow morning in the dark with another CEO that I know really well. And that's his routine. He's created a routine, starts at 6:30, walks whatever he walks, and then goes to his office, plans his day, and that's the way he starts his day. And a lot of business owners that I know create routines like this. They create routines, they create ways of doing things. And the reason they create routines or habits is because then they don't have to think. So they'll get to the office, they'll sit at their desk, they'll naturally start planning their day because that's what they do every day. And I'm here to tell you that the most successful businesses that I've worked with do that. They plan every single day. They don't leave things to chance. They have a system, they have a process, or they have somebody to manage it for them. Actually, that's a very interesting thing. And I've heard from a few business owners over the last few years, actually, that have personal assistants so that their days are very organized, very structured. So I've got a brother that's in the construction and real estate business, and he has a personal assistant that he says makes him so much more productive. She'll book his meetings, she'll make sure that little things get done and all that, so he can focus on the thing that he's really, really good at doing, and that is leading. So I want you to understand, for every one of us on this webinar, by planning our day, we become better leaders. And that's really the whole objective. And one of the systems that I've used for years that works really well for me, and I use a very simplistic system. I mean, there's lots of software, really, really good software. Actually, on Thursday, I recommend you sign up for that mastermind meeting, because I'm going to discuss a little bit more specifics that you can learn from, software and technology and things that you can use. But one of the things that I've always done is add a really simple system, pen and paper on my desk. Even now, I've got a pen and paper on my desk. And what I'll do is every morning, I will write down, these are the things that must be done today. These are the things that should be done today. And these are the things that would be nice to do today. And then, so I'm prioritizing every single thing I do. And that's exactly what you want to do, because there are certain things that have to be done today. I mean, there's just no option. You've got to invoice your clients, or you've got to go pick up a check, or whatever it is that's very, very important. You want to be doing those things. So you want to prioritize your day. And the advantage you've got then is you can look at this list. You might say to your staff, I'm really busy today. I'm focused on this, that, and that. I don't want you to disturb me, because these are the things I want to do. But the thing I want you to understand is the simpler you keep it, the better it is. Sometimes what happens, and it's happened to me a few times over the years, I will start using some software of sorts, like a daily planning software. I'll start using it. And then what I realize is maybe I don't have it on all my computers, or I have to go in, I have to click a few things to do it. So I've stuck with a simple system. So even though I've tried different systems before, I've stuck with a simple system. And often I'll say this to people. I'll say that you don't realize the value of it. I think the problem with a daily to-do list, it just sounds too simple. Are you saying to me that if I sit down in the morning and plan my day, I'm going to get much more done? And my answer to you is absolutely. You're going to get much more done. You are going to become more productive. So it's really important that you understand that. The employees to do exactly the same thing. Because think of the value of this. Let's say I'm in retailing. So every day, there are certain things that need to be done. I maybe need to do some sales and marketing. I may need to do some merchandising. I may need to do some input of information into our computer system, administration tasks. I may need to deal with some employees, maybe do some employee training and some planning. But all of these things are specifics that are part of my job. And if I leave any of these out, they could create a problem. And the thing I've learned about a lot of people is once you give them a bit of structure, it makes it easier for them to understand. So you might find it very easy for, to get a piece of paper out and just write down your to-do list and use that and become very effective. Whereas other people might need headings. Actually, this idea came from one of the most successful business owners I've ever met. I was mentoring her early on in my days as a trainer of small businesses. And one day she came to me and she said to me, Andrew, I've got a problem. And I said, what's the problem? She said, my employees are spending a lot of time marketing, but not doing enough administration. I said, what's the problem? She said, you're right. We've got to do marketing and sales, else we can't survive. But she said, we also need to get that information into our computer system. And you've got to understand the value of this is once you give your employees structure, what they do is they'll stick to the structure. They'll know that every morning they have to plan their merchandising, that every morning they have to do whatever marketing you do in your business, whatever their tasks are, so that if you can create a to-do list, let's say, for example, you got 3 or 4 people working for you and each one have different functions, maybe you'd create a different to-do list for them. And the idea is to give them structure, and then you want to train them how to do it. Because here's the thing you've got to learn as a business owner, which is, I think, a very, very important thing, is we've got to lead by example. I can't be going to my employees and saying, you know what, every morning you need to start your day by planning your day, and I don't do the same thing. Because I think you almost lose a bit of credibility when you tell people what to do and you don't do it yourself. So I would start off like that. If you want to become more organized, I always go as far as saying that if you implement it in your business, you are going to become more profitable. And if that's one of the things that motivate you, and usually it is, and hopefully it is, I'm telling you that this is going to make your business more profitable because you're going to get things done. The simple things that sometimes we forget. We forget to send out that email. We forget to phone that customer. We forget that order because we wrote it on a piece of paper, whatever it is. All these things that we do that are niggly things that have a direct impact on our business. But let me tell you a story. And some of you have maybe heard the story before, and I apologize, but I think it's a really important story. When I first started this current business that I have 20 years ago this year, I had a partner, nice guy, a really nice guy. I must be honest, even though eventually I bought him out and he left the company, he was a really nice guy in the beginning. Maybe that's a better way to say it. But the one thing I found about this guy is he was totally disorganized. It was very, very frustrating. In our business as seminar presenters, webinar presenters, you have to always be on time. There are no exceptions. I mean, I can't have, like I had a seminar this morning with a lot of people in the room and, show up late. It's embarrassing for you. It's embarrassing for the organizers, all these type of things. Anyway, so he was this type of guy. Very good, very talented, but disorganized. He'd arrive at a meeting just on time or a couple of minutes later. And it was never his fault, which is I always found very, very interesting. And maybe you've even got somebody like this, or maybe you're this type of person. You're always late. And people always have a valid reason. I know I've got these two friends, and when we're going to have an event, we take bets at how late they're going to be. And you know what? When people are taking bets about how late you're going to be and expecting you to be late, that you have a problem. And it's a very, very simple planning problem. Anyway, so at the time, actually, we were working remotely. He was working from home and I was working from home. And then we used to run these seminars, live workshops and seminars in places like the Staples Store and Chambers of Commerce and things like that. And it was working really well for us, but we needed to be organized. Anyway, so one day I said to him, what we're going to do from now on is we are going to, on Sunday night, he used to love watching Sopranos. I said, on Sunday night, after you finish watching Sopranos, you are going to send me your weekly to-do list, and I'm going to send you my weekly to-do list. And I said, we're going to use exactly the same system. He said, no, you know what? I have my system, which I always find amazing. When you find a business owner that's a little bit disorganized and you try and share with them what to do, they'll say, no, I've got a way of doing things. So I said, no, that's not how you scale a business. The way you scale a business is if you and I are working the same business and I'm going to create a system, then we all use the system. So if we create a daily to-do list, all of us need to use the daily to-do list so that we create a uniform process, a uniform system, a uniform way of doing things. Anyway, so that's exactly what happened. Eventually, I convinced him. It took me a bit of time, but I convinced him that he was going to send me his list and I was going to send him a list. And I promise you, that's when our business started growing, because then we were doing different things. I'd see he's doing marketing this week. You're going to see a client. I would go and see other clients. And it also forces you almost to be productive because you become accountable. You've got this person that you are saying, you know what, I'm going to do this. And let's say you're a one-person business. And I'm sure there's some of you on this webinar that are one-person businesses. The way you do this is if you don't have any employees, if you don't have, you find somebody that's an accountability partner for you, somebody that's in another business, another entrepreneur. And what you do is every week you share your to-do list with them or your weekly plan with them. And the idea here is to become accountable to somebody else. And that is exactly what happened in our business. I was accountable to him and he was accountable to me. Even though I was the owner of the business, I was accountable to, in this case, one of my key employees who eventually became one of my partners. but it made us far more productive. So that's the first thing. The second thing, it forced us to set aside time to do things that are important. I don't know about your business, but in my business, I've got marketing to do, I've got cold calling to do, I've got networking to do, I've got lots of different things that I need to do. And what happens is if I don't organize it, I'll justify delaying it. Oh, too much going on this week, I can't do this. But there are certain things that need to be done. And those things you want to set aside time. Very simple example. I was saying to the group I was working with this morning is that I read a lot. I read every single day. And it was really interesting because I never used to be a reader, but I was listening to this, a tape in those days, one day, and there was this guy called Zig Ziglar, nice name for a public speaker. And he said to me and everybody that listened to the tape, that if you read just 10 minutes a day, you'd read more books than most people in North America. And I found that really interesting, so that you just allocate a little bit of time. And here's the lesson I've learned is that most successful business owners that I know read. They'll speak about different books. Somebody will say to you, you should read Atomic Habits, or you should read this, or you should read that, or whatever it is. And the problem is that often we don't have time for those things. Here's the reason we don't have time. Time is a limited resource. You've got to allocate time. So you've got to say, this is a priority of mine. I, for example, need to do marketing every week. I need to send out an email every week. When it comes to your family, I need to allocate time to spend with my family every week. Otherwise, you have this absolute chaos. Some of us work too much. Some of us won't work enough. But at least if you can see it on a piece of paper, it makes it easier to do. Another thing I just thought about is a very successful business owner that I worked with years ago. Actually, we started together. We used to meet every Wednesday afternoon to discuss our businesses. He had his business and I had my business. And when he found employees that weren't being as productive as they should be, he'd go to them and say, what I want you to do the next week is I want you to get a pen and paper, put half an hour sessions on there, and I want you to write down what you do every half an hour. And if you're a little bit overwhelmed in your business at the moment, I encourage you to do that. What you do is you write down what you're doing all day. Just write down, I'm doing merchandising, I'm phoning clients, I'm doing the banking, whatever you do. Just write these things down on a calendar. Then at the end of the week, just look at what you've done and look at how many of those things help you improve and grow your business. Because sometimes, we have to-do lists in business, but sometimes you have to have a list of things you mustn't do. Almost like a do not do list. Don't do those things because they don't help grow the business. Rather, outsource them or whatever it is. So that's how we become more successful. So just like your daily to-do list, I would encourage you to get all your employees to create a weekly list so they know. On Monday, I do merchandising. On Tuesday, I take out the promotions. On Wednesday, I re-merchandise the storage areas or whatever it is. So they've got very, very strict guidelines. And I found when I was a retailer, that's exactly what happened. We had certain days we had to order certain things, but you can't memorize. Well, you suppose you can do whatever you want, but I couldn't memorize all these things. So writing them down really helped. I wake up in the morning. It's a Tuesday. Tuesday, we order candy. We order this, that, and that. Here's all the checklists. We just pull them in, send them through to the supplier, and we'll do them. And what you want to do is you want to encourage your employees to also create weekly to-do lists. So we have a rule in BizLaunch that every Monday morning by 9:30, I need to see your weekly to-do list. But let me show you how effective this is that let's say I'm checking out my writer. And she gave me the weekly to-do list. Last week, I didn't look at it, but this week I'll look at it. So she doesn't know when I'm going to look at her plan for the week because I want her to manage herself. I don't want to be managing her because I don't employ people to manage them. Even when I interview them, I try and see that they have self-management skills. So what happens is if she gives me a weekly to-do list, or a weekly plan, I can make sure by following up a couple of things every now and then. And it's amazing how it makes them more productive and more effective. And JD says, which is a really important thing, especially as I get older, is reading daily is medically proven to improve memory and increase concentration. It's all be linked to reducing stress and fighting cognitive decline. And you know what? If this works for you, do it. It works for me, definitely. Absolutely. Two things that work for me to remove stress and as a business owner is, one is I love reading, and the other one is walking. I think it's the best thing I've ever started doing in my life. And what you want to do is make sure that your employees share it with you. And then you don't have to check it all the time, which is really key. But you're giving them a system. You could almost say, so what are you working on this week? What merchandising are you doing? When are you putting up the promotions? You know, all those type of things are things you can do. Again, try and create a structure. You know, use a template like this, and you can create your own. You don't have to use mine. At the top, you want to focus on what are your 3 priorities for this week? What are the things you're going to be focusing on? Then you go through each department of your business. What are you going to do when it comes to sales and marketing this week? What are you going to do when it comes to promotions this week? What are you going to do when it comes? Do you see what I'm saying? So depending on the nature of your business, you could give different headings. Most of us will have similar, but you could have totally different headings depending on what business you're in. But the key here is to create a structure. And I want you to understand that the most successful businesses in the world do this, and it works for them. And I believe that if it works for them, it can work for you too, because you know, all of these big businesses started as small businesses once upon a time. The other thing that I think is important is to become more productive. So one of the things that I've learned is that there are a certain amount of hours in the day. And for me, it's about 3 hours of the day where I'm very productive. I don't want to say I'm lazy the rest of the time, but I'm not as productive. So trying as a business owner to identify your most productive time is a good thing, because in my most productive time, then I want to work on creating new slides. I want to work on creating new headings for my for different things that I'm creating and things like that. But I've got to identify my most productive time. And you'll realize this very, very quickly, is that different people have different times that they're productive. Some people will be at night, they're more productive. Some people are early morning people. So it really depends on you and what you prefer. And there's no right or wrong, but you want to identify that. So with yourself and with your employees, ideally. The other thing I've learned is that you've got to finish tasks. I think this is very, very important that you learn to do this, you know, because most business owners, I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe have almost like mild ADD in the sense that they get very, very easily distracted. I call them shiny objects. You know, you're working on something here, and then you notice something else that needs to be fixed, and then you notice something else. So what you do is you get so distracted that sometimes you'll be working on 4 or 5 things at a time. And what happens is, which is really stressful for me, is none of those things get done. So what you want to try and do is batch things. You know, if you're going to be doing, you're ordering, you know, pick a day. On Tuesday, we place all of our orders. On Wednesday, we do all the promotions and take the merchandise and put it out. On Thursday, we do whatever it is. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to batch things. So everything gets done on the same day. And I'm telling you that you're going to finish off projects or tasks or whatever you're going to call it, or objectives or goals. I don't care what topic, what name you give it. And that's very, very, it's a great feeling. Actually, making sure that things get done, I think, is really, really important. You know, I would even go as far as saying, if you every now and then have to work a little bit extra just to get something done, that feeling that you get when something's finished. I know we work on video projects. I work quite a lot with Mark on video projects, and he's obsessive. We work until the job is done. Then we move on. And the reason we do this, it's almost like a sense of relief. This project is finished. Let's move on to the next one. And you want to do this in your daily business. I think it's very, very important that you do this in your daily business, because it could change your productivity. It could make you more organized things because you want to simplify our lives. Let me tell you a little bit. Another example is many business owners will have habits, for example. I remember reading about Mark Zuckerberg with the same T-shirts and the same trousers every single day. And the reason is because then he doesn't have to think. And a bunch of people do it. I know Barack Obama had the same rule. He had 3 or 4 different colors. He would just go to his closet, just pull out whatever he saw, and he'd put it on. So then he wouldn't have to think about different things. So what you're doing is you automatically, your brain learns to automatically just take that, so I don't have to focus on things. So certain things you don't focus on, and habits are the best way of doing that. You know, so you create these routines, you create these habits. Then what you want to do is, I'm not a fan of meetings, just so you know. I'm a bit, everybody knows that works with me, that meetings to me are often a waste of time. And it's very interesting that sometimes people agree with me, not always. There was a recent example, and some of you maybe read it in the media, a big company, Shopify, the biggest e-commerce company in the world. What they decided to do is they scrapped all meetings that across the company that required 2 or more people. So they went and they just deleted all these meetings. And it's really interesting because, I mean, I don't know if they're going to still have meetings or how the processes work. But very often when I speak to very senior people in large companies, they'll say to me that they spend their whole day in meetings. They'll say things like, I don't find time to do my work because I'm in meetings. And you know what? Meetings can be productive, but they can also be a waste of time. So just be very careful of that. But you need to talk to your employees. You need to have a discussion. You know, maybe go to them one-on-one and say, so what went well last week? What didn't go well last week? Because you want to try and identify some of the challenges your employees are having, because you want to be the first to know, or I want to be the first to know. Somebody's struggling with a project, somebody's struggling with a task, somebody's struggling with another employee. I want to be the first person to know, because I want you to know this, is that often the problems that you're having on the ground in your business often don't reach the level they should. I was thinking of an example. I'm staying at a hotel now, and I had a little problem, and I went to the front desk, and the person at the front desk said, don't worry, I'm going to speak to my manager about it, and I'm going to sort it out. That was 2 days ago. I haven't heard anything again. So the thing is, you've got to understand, if you're an owner, if you're a manager, often these things are almost being swept to the side and not being dealt with. And that is a problem. You want to try and identify, when it's people you work with, or your partners, whoever it is, where are they stuck? What are they struggling with? Because often, because of your experience, because of your knowledge, because of the things that you've done in your life, you know how to solve these things. So, and you want to know if there's a problem in your company that's creating a problem for your customers, you want to be the first one to know about it. And so this is why you want to have this little discussion. And then what are the top 3 things you're working on this week? So it's almost like, you know, you're walking around, let's assume you got a retail store, you're walking around your store, you know, asking people how things going, how was last week, what went well, what didn't go well, do you have any struggles? And what are the 3 things you're working on this week? Very casually, but very structured. You ask the same questions over and over again. So the person's almost anticipating what you're going to ask, and then they get ready for the answers. So they start preparing for when you come around, they know you're going to ask these questions. And it's a really simple habit, but a very, very important one. Let me tell you something else. Very often over the years, I've spoken to business owners that do not take vacations. And I say to them, I do not understand your logic. They'll say, oh no, but I'm too busy, or, you know, I can't take holidays. If I'm not there, my business won't survive. And some of you maybe feel like that. But here's the thing I've realized. Firstly, is if you don't take vacations as a business owner, you're going to probably burn out eventually. And if that doesn't happen, you're going to probably not have a good relationship with your family. Because if you're working all the time, not taking time off, I promise you, and many of you will remember this, your favorite time as a kid was when you spent time with your parents on vacation, because they were not so stressed, they were more relaxed, they spent more time with you. So that's one of the reasons I encourage business owners to regularly take holidays. But let me tell you something else, is that getting away from your business is very, very good for you. You know, just a break from the system. So getting away from your business is good for you. It also gives you time to reflect on your business and think about some of the things that you don't think about on a daily basis. So this is what I'd encourage you to do, is to come up with a really simple way of doing things. Every year, what you've got to do is you've got to set yourself goals. This is, I don't want to say compulsory, but it's something that every business owner should do. You know, we need to set sales goals, we need to set cash goals, we need to set profit goals, all those type of things. But every year, you've got to set goals. And I've got a really important, I've got a habit that I've created over the years, is that I set goals at the beginning of the year, and then every 90 days, I update these things. Because human beings, when they have a target, when they have something to work towards, they often more focused. So if I say, well, I want 50 customers, or I want $100,000 in revenue, or I want to upgrade our website by this date, or whatever it is, you're giving yourself a deadline, you're giving yourself a date, which is always a very, very good idea when you set goals. The next thing, as I mentioned, and I learned this when I was a retailer. When I was a retailer, we started off as this very, very simple, bad retailer. Let me be honest, I was not a good retailer when I started. I wasn't making much money, but then what happened was I joined this buying group, one of the largest buying groups in the world, which is based in Europe and different parts of the world, called SPAR. And the one thing I learned, I don't know if it's because I was part of them, but they would have every 90 days, they have these things called look and learn trips. We'd get a bunch of retailers, and I encourage you to do the same thing, maybe with your BIA or something, but get a bunch of retailers in a little minibus and then go and visit other businesses in other towns or other cities. And I found this to be very, very effective. And it really, really helped me. Actually, I was saying to a group today, you know, if you're early on in business and you can afford it, it's a very good idea to get on a plane and fly from here to New York, Chicago, Toronto, maybe LA and Miami, or whatever it is. Choose 5 cities in North America and just go and see businesses like yours. You know, just go and learn, you know, just get involved. And that's very, very good for your business. And I've always justified going to trade shows, going to conferences, traveling to different parts of the world to learn about my business. And I encourage you to do the same thing. Firstly, it's a tax, it's an expense for your business, which is tax deductible, and a legitimate expense because you're doing research and marketing to grow your business. And it's also very good for you. The other thing is, it's a good thing that your business learns to operate without you. I saw a really inspiring message this afternoon on Facebook of one of my clients in my early days, has become very, very successful. But what she decided to do is to take 3 months off. And I find some business owners need to do this. I've never needed to take 3 months off, I think, because I just take so much time off. But she decided to take off 3 months. She called it a sabbatical. She needed a break and traveled around the world. And what happened was that while she was away, they had their best year in 29 years. The boss was away and they got their best revenue targets. So if ever you need a good reason to take time off, organize yourself, take time off because your business deserves it. And maybe it'll make your business more effective. But the fact that you relax, that you inspire, that you motivate it, helps everyone. The other thing I do that works really well for me, actually, I don't think I could live my life or run this business without that, is I use a Google Calendar and I memorize nothing. So I do not know what I'm doing tomorrow. Just before I go to sleep tonight, I turn on my phone, I just look at what's scheduled for tomorrow, and based on that, I then know what to do tomorrow, and I plan my day in the morning. But the key thing is that my calendar remembers for me. I don't need to remember what's happening tomorrow. My calendar remembers for me. But then I've got to have the discipline to enter information regularly into my calendar. So I'll put everything in my calendar. So tomorrow, I know, I don't need to know, but I know that I have to pay my staff tomorrow. When I wake up in the morning, my calendar will send me a reminder and say, Andrew, pay your employees today. Tomorrow I have to pay my insurance. So tomorrow morning, I'll have a reminder, Andrew, pay insurance tomorrow. All of these things are in my calendar, so I don't have to remember them. And you've got to learn to do this. For those of us that are retailers, I mean, we have events every year. We know every year there's going to be Christmas, then there's going to be New Year, then there's going to be Valentine's Day, then there's going to be, and I want you to imagine, and I've seen some people like this, and actually my daughter-in-law is like this. She keeps boxes of stuff. So, you know, that's for Valentine's Day. And that's the way we've got to think of our business, is we've got to organize ourselves so we know this time of the year, this is what we take out. So your calendar operates as almost an extension of your brain, like I was saying earlier on. So it remembers things for you. So you don't have to remember. And the less you have to remember, the better it is for you. So put everything on your Google Calendar. So this is an example. This is not my Google Calendar, but it's very, very similar to my Google Calendar. So I use color codes. I use reminders. If I'm running a seminar, like this morning, I was running a live workshop. What I did is I attached the slides, the notes, all the templates, all of that to the message. So when I'm looking for stuff, it's all in one place. When I'm flying anywhere, I attach my tickets. They don't have to remember things. You don't have to say to me, Andrew, where's your ticket? Or, you know, what time are you going? Or what time should I pick you up to go to the airport? Whatever. My calendar remembers all of those things. And I encourage you, if you're not doing it at the moment, is start using a Google Calendar. And then, or any, you don't have to use Google, any calendar. And then train your employees to do the same thing. You could even have shared calendars. You know, you could share calendars so you know what different things are going on. Actually, I create quite a few shared calendars for different things, sometimes not even business related, but they're all on my calendar. And I can just click on it, and then it populates my whole calendar with all the information. But the idea is that I don't have to memorize anything. I can use my brain to be creative and grow my business. So that's the logic that I use, a very simple logic, but it works very, very effectively for me. One of the things that I've seen many times over the years is I'll speak to business owners. They'll say things like, you know what, I've got 3,422 emails in my email box. When somebody says that to me, I start hyperventilating. And the reason I started hyperventilating is I realize as a business owner that if I haven't read my email for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, whatever it is, there could be potential business in there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that when you have too much stuff, like in your email box, in the beginning, it's not overwhelming, but eventually it gets overwhelming. You know, you start thinking, this is too much. I can't respond to all these emails. And I hear people doing this, and I realize that it's because they do not have a system. They do not have a structure. They do not have a way of doing things. And I mean, if you've got a system that's working for you, I don't want you to change it. But the key thing I encourage you to do is to create a process. So these are the things that I need to do every day. So what I do in the morning, and I've heard a lot of business owners doing this, I will not respond to emails before about 10:30, 11. And it's not because I don't want to. I always think that there's a couple of reasons I do that. One is that I don't want to respond to emails too fast, which I have a tendency to do. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is it gives me a bit of time to think. And actually, I learned this from my brother. He has a habit, especially if he's writing a long email to, you know, any legal issues or whatever is in the property and the real estate business. what he does is he leaves the email overnight and then checks it in the next morning and sends it out. I mean, you don't have to be so fanatical, but what I'm saying to you is that allocating specific time to respond to emails is a good idea. So in my case, every morning I'll sit at my desk, I will respond to every single email. I respond to my own emails. I don't have anybody doing it for me. I respond to my own emails at the same time, usually. Okay, obviously there's always exceptions to the rule. Nobody's perfect, and I'm far from perfect, just so you know. But I set aside time to do things. The second thing, or the habit I've created, is if somebody, for example, asks me for something in the email, can you send me that template? Or can you send me those slides? Or can you send me whatever? I respond to those things immediately. So I will stop that email, I'll go and fetch that thing, I'll scan it, I'll attach it, and I'll send it through. And two things happen. One, it's off my plate. But secondly, I noticed over the years that people really appreciated that you respond in a decent amount of time. Otherwise, it's very, very frustrating. The third thing I encourage you to do is to organize your email box. So you almost want to color code it. And let me give you an example. I have quite a few clients. So what I do is I create folders for these clients. And then when I'm communicating with them, I move all the emails into this folder, okay? So let's say, I don't know, one of my clients is Care Credit in the US. I've got a folder for them. And every single time they communicate with me, they want me to run some webinars at the end of March. And they've been sending me a few emails. But with a lot of these corporate customers, it takes a bunch of time for them to make a decision about doing very, very simple things in the way I think. But I keep it in there. So I've got that information. It's available. And it's very, very good to be organized because chaos is a problem. You've seen it. I mean, I don't know, I don't watch much TV, but every now and then I'll see these shows of people that live in this absolute chaos. And I think it's usually because they started out, in a little way, then eventually got a bit overwhelmed. And often it's mental health issues. So, I mean, that's a different conversation. But just be very, very careful of being disorganized in your business. I believe it's going to cost you money. If you're disorganized, it's definitely going to cost you money. So you want to learn how to organize the simple things. And the other thing I encourage you to do is what happens, and I do the same thing. I will subscribe to lots of newsletters. I will see something sometimes because they force you to do it, other times because I'm interested in a topic. But if I realize I'm not reading something, so sometimes I'll go to my email box and I'll see that the same person or the same company has sent me emails, I haven't looked at them, I'll just unsubscribe because then it unclogs my email box. But a lot of people, actually the emails they're getting into the email box are all spam and promotional emails and things like that, but they never go and unsubscribe, so they keep sending it. So that's one thing. The other thing that I use, because I think I'm a little bit paranoid, is I use an email tracker. So what it does is when I've sent somebody, like this morning I ran the seminar, this afternoon I said to these people, these wonderful people that I worked with, I said to them, I will send you the slides and I will send you the templates. I sent out the slides and templates, and straight away my tracker said, this person's clicked the link and opened these slides. So I knew that, you know what, she's received it. If she says to me, Andrew, where are the slides? I'll say, no, I sent it through yesterday and you received it. And that's the way you do things. And again, you don't have to be like me. I'm a little bit paranoid. I like to know, did somebody receive my email? And if they did, I'd like to know that. And then I can follow up or not, depending on the client. So that's one of the things I do. The next thing you want to learn to do, and every one of us have to learn to do this. I find some business owners do this really, really well, and some business owners don't do this well at all. And I was speaking to a business owner last week, and I was a little bit concerned about it, because what she tends to do, which is a bit of a problem, is every time she has a problem with an employee, she'll take over that task. She'll say, no, don't worry, don't do that, I will do that. And then what happens is she gets overwhelmed because she's got so much, she's doing so much, because instead of making sure that the employee is trained and knows how to do it, she rather takes over the job herself. And just be very, very careful of this. Sometimes it's a problem with perfectionists. I'm not a perfectionist. I think I've got a little bit of OCD, but I'm not a perfectionist. But what happens is, if you're a perfectionist, you almost feel like everything needs to go through you before it gets sent out to the clients. You've heard clients doing, people doing that, and that is a bit of a problem. But the one thing you must learn to do is to delegate. It's the only way you're going to grow your business. So that's the first thing. The second thing, which I think is quite important, there are certain things that we do in our business that we like, and there are certain things that we do in our business that we don't like. So what you want to try and do is you want to try and, as soon as you can, is delegate those tasks that you don't like out. It might be, for example, marketing. You might decide, you know what, I'm not so good at marketing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to outsource the marketing, or I'm going to delegate it to somebody else. The thing that you've got to realize, firstly, is the more structured you are, the better it is. I know, for example, there's a lot of people doing this nowadays, including myself. We use websites like Upwork or whatever. When we work on big projects, we outsource a lot of things. Actually, we outsource just about everything. We don't keep anything in-house nowadays, and never have. That's the way we run our business for the last 20 or so years. But the first thing you want to do as a business owner is decide what needs to be delegated. So maybe I want to delegate the bookkeeping or the accounting or the merchandising or the ordering, whatever it is, you've got to decide. The second thing you want to do is you've got to make sure that when you, let's say I'm one of your employees, when you give me a task, you must make sure that I can handle it. You want to focus on my strengths. I always say this to business owners, is that every single one of your employees have got certain skills and certain things that they're really good at doing and like doing, and certain things that they're not so good at doing. So what you want to try and identify is what are their strengths, and then you want to focus on those. And even you as a business owner or a human being, instead of fixing your weaknesses, rather focus on your strengths. I'll give you a very good example. I'm not a good writer, and I've got two options. Either I go back to university and learn how to become a good writer, which I think is going to be a waste of money, or I write content and then give it to somebody and let them fix it properly, or get somebody just to write the content from scratch. And that's the decision I've made as a business owner. I don't write any of our content. I always have somebody writing. I may put down a couple of bullet points, a couple of thoughts, whatever it is, but I outsource that whole thing. But I outsource to people that are capable of doing it, which is the key. I don't want to be outsourcing it to somebody that can't do it. So identifying your employee's strengths is the key thing. The next thing you've got to learn to do, which is really, really important, is a communication issue, because I find that often you've not explained, or I've not explained to the employee exactly what needs to be done, or they didn't understand. So they didn't understand because I didn't give them clear instructions, and I didn't tell them what the expected outcome was. So what you want to do, I don't want to say you need to be paranoid, but you've always got to think of the person on the other end. Make it as easy as possible for them to follow your guidance, and make sure that when you give me instructions, let's say I'm your employee, when you give me instructions, that I really understand what's expected of me. So say to me, do you have any questions? Is there anything you don't understand? Are you okay with the expected outcome? Can you do this? That's what you want to do, because you don't want to duplicate things. You don't want to send somebody to go and merchandise all the shelves, and then they come back and they haven't done it properly, and then you've got to send somebody else. And I see a lot of this repetitive work going on in small businesses, which is not a good use of your time. So that's the first thing. The other thing I think, which is really key, I was thinking of it as I was speaking, is the importance of trusting these people. If you've employed people, you've got to trust them to do the job. Otherwise, they're the wrong person for the job. Really, if you don't trust them to do the job, they're the wrong person. You need to get rid of them. And it's one of the most difficult things I think, as a business owner, is when you have to get rid of an employee. But I have said this to many business owners over the years, that person is not right. Anytime you second guess an employee, it's about time, I think you let them go, because you know that once they go, things are going to work better. So you want to encourage people to ask questions. You want to set clear deadlines. This is one of the lessons that I've learned that work really, really well for me. Even when there aren't deadlines, I create deadlines, you know. So if something needs to be done by, I don't know, the 15th of February, I'll set myself a deadline, giving me a little bit of time, maybe the 10th of February, this will be done. And what happens is you find that when you've got a deadline, you achieve it. Why? I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm telling you that we achieve 90% of our deadlines in business on big projects. And I think about it sometimes when I see other clients, and I was thinking about it early on. We've got a really large one of the credit card companies that's been working on content for the last 8 months. I'm thinking, really, 8 months? If you gave it to us at BizLaunch, we take 4 weeks, we get it done, we record it. In 2 months, you'd have it up and running, and people would be watching it. These guys have done, and they haven't even finished the content, and it's taken them 8 months. But this is what happens: is people don't have deadlines. They leave open. You know, when we get time, we're going to do this. And humans, when you say do it when you have time, it's a big problem. So try and be specific. You know, if you give somebody a task, say to them, you know, Tuesday at 2 p.m., can you have it done by then? They'll either say yes or no, and then give them feedback. The next thing you want to do is when you do have to have meetings, because I think some businesses you do, I would still say that many businesses can go back and look at how many meetings they have and just decide to have half, and I promise you they'd still be as effective as they were before. And I think what's happened with meetings is they become a bad habit. They really be. I even see that with Zoom meetings now. I mean, I met a guy on LinkedIn that's working on some international projects in India. And he said to me, you know, can we chat? And I said, sure. He said, you know, should we set up a Zoom meeting? I said, no, I'll just call you. I mean, I had a short 5-10 minute discussion. Instead of just setting up a meeting, I was creating a Zoom call, sitting with this guy, talking about the weather and other stuff that people do. I just got to the point, discussed it, and moved on. And this is what you got to learn to do, is meetings don't have to be half an hour. They don't have to be an hour. They can be 15 minutes. They can be 10 minutes. They can be, as long as the key thing is whenever you're going to meet with somebody, even with a client or with your accountant or with a lawyer or anybody like that, the more organized you are, the better it is for you. So if you're going to have a meeting with the staff, always have an agenda. Just say, what are we going to discuss? You know, and even if you have the same topics you discuss every time, people need to be prepared for these meetings. You don't want to go to a meeting, people show up and say, oh, I forgot to bring the sales figures. Okay, well, let's cancel the meeting and let's do it, whatever, 2 days time, whatever. This is what happens. I see this happening quite regularly. So you want to make sure that everybody knows what's going to be discussed at the meeting and they show up on time. You start meetings on time. This is really, really important. You start them and you end them on time. No excuses. If somebody's coming to the meeting, you want to make sure they are prepared. And at the end of the meeting, you want to assign tasks. This is what you're going to do. That's what you're going to do. So the idea is meetings are there to push the business forward. They're not just opportunities to sit down with people, just talk about what you've been doing in your social time and things like that. I mean, you can arrange things like that, but you just got to be very careful. If you want to be, you want to create a process or system, you can always create a template. I don't think you have to do that, but you can. I use a template in BizLaunch because it works easier for me, and I just cut and paste. So I like doing that. The other thing you got to be very careful of, and I was saying this morning when I was doing this workshop, I was saying, you know, the problem often, and I see this even with webinars, you know, if we have a webinar on Facebook marketing, we're going to have lots of people sign up. And here's the thing that I've realized, you know, social media can be very, very effective, but it's only part of your marketing. So just be very, very careful. And I think that sometimes, you know, we're looking for a silver bullet. That's what we're doing. We think, you know what, if I do Google advertising, or if I do Facebook advertising, or if I upgrade my website, or if I create an email campaign, instantly, I'm going to do a lot of business. The reality is not that. And I've seen it so many times, you know, people will start things and then they don't get results. I'm still yet to tell you that it can be very, very effective. I had a meeting with one of my coaching clients 2 weeks ago, and she creates these brilliant videos, YouTube videos. But she's a natural. I've seen her on camera. She's an absolute natural. And I said to her, every week, you've got to create a video. And then every week, you've got to share that. There are two things that I try and get across to her. Firstly, social media is about doing things over and over again. And you've got to be consistent, because if you're not consistent, you're not going to pick up clients. So even when it comes to your social media in your business, if you've decided this is an important part of your marketing, and I'm yet to tell you that it doesn't have to be, but if you've decided it's good for your business and it's going to make you more money, then I can justify it. So that's the first thing, is to make that decision. The second thing is always have a plan, because if you've got a plan, on Monday we'll share a picture, on Tuesday we'll share a video, on Wednesday we'll share whatever it is. But you start doing these things regularly, but you have a plan. And if you're not there, let's say because you've gone on holiday somewhere, on a golfing trip or whatever it is that you do, somebody else that stays behind knows the process. Make sure that if you're going to spend time on Facebook or Twitter or that obsessive thing, TikTok, is always set a time limit. One of the biggest advantages we have as business owners is our time is our own. One of the biggest disadvantages we have as a business owner is our time is our own. So I can spend 2 hours on LinkedIn and nobody will even know that I've been just, going and looking, watching videos or whatever it is. The other thing you want to do is, and it's a really important thing, but you're just going to be very careful of that you don't create bad habits. You've created the Facebook page or the TikTok or the Instagram or whatever it is, then people communicate with you and you do not respond. You don't want to be doing that, which is a big, big problem. And again, make sure you have some way of doing things. In our business, we're a little bit obsessive about responding to things, but even us, we make mistakes sometimes. Schedule your posts in advance, any social media posts, and then measure your ROI, which I think is a really important thing. What does ROI mean? Return on investment. If you're going to be spending $1,000 on Google Ads or 5 hours a week on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or TikTok, whatever you're spending time on, you got to know that it's generating business for you. Otherwise, why would you do it? Why would you spend time on social? Actually, yesterday, I met a guy that manages an incubator, and I said to him, can we connect on LinkedIn? He said, no, I don't use any social media, just a waste of my time. And I thought, oh, interesting. And it works for him. It doesn't work for the rest of us, maybe, but it works for him. So the key thing here is to measure the effectiveness. Here again is another little template you could use. And again, it sounds like these are a lot of pieces of paper. And for some of you might think like that. But the point is that you can put these all in a binder, and then you almost have a system. You're creating a system. This is how you plan your day. This is how you plan your week. This is the template you use to plan the social media of the week, but you're giving people structure. And people like structure, just so you know. It's easier. I can see it when I run my workshops. People always want my templates. I don't know if they're ever going to use them, but they always want my templates. I'm always amazed that people want my templates. But I know that they don't all use them. So let me tell you something interesting that I learned. I was in the franchise industry for 11 years. And I believe that made me a much better business owner. And the reason it made me a much better business owner is the one thing I learned in the franchise industry is that you standardize as many things as you can. And because you standardize things, customers like it more. It makes you more effective. And it allows you to teach other people to do a lot of your functions. So I learned that very, very quickly. And it was really interesting because before I went into that industry, I used to say things like, we treat customers all differently. We don't want to standardize things. And often when I speak to creative people, they'll say this. But here's the lesson I've learned is that if you really want to be successful, you've got to learn to work on your business, not in it. In the beginning, all of us work in it, including myself. But as our business grows and scales, what we want to do is we want to be the leader that focuses. Imagine yourself in a retail store, walking around, almost like a conductor, greeting people, being nice to people, this and that, speaking to your employees. Say, I noticed that shelves not merchandised. Make sure you do this. So that's what you got to do. And I learned this in retailing because I always believed when I started, I was having this discussion with somebody the other day. When I started, I believed that if I was behind the counter, I would make more money. And you'll see this sometimes in family-owned businesses or traditional, if you want to use the word traditional businesses, where the owner is always behind the counter. I realized that when I was on the other side of the counter, I made more money. And there's a great book that all of you should read that I think changed the way I think. I've already understood the franchise model, but sometimes you'll read a book and it explains it so simplistically that it influences the way you run your business. And the book that I'm speaking about is a book called The E-Myth Revisited, which is a very old book. I mean, it's not new. You'll find it, if you buy secondhand books, you'll find it somewhere. And his basic principles are these. The first thing is systems help you run your business. And I believe with that 100%, is I like systems because they make my life easier. So that's the first thing. Secondly, is that a system ensures that things are done consistently, regardless of who's doing things. So it doesn't matter who does the job, you get the same service. And I had an example. I'm now traveling in Europe, and on Sunday, I went to a restaurant, and I never stand in lineups, just so you know. It doesn't matter how good the food is. Doesn't matter how brilliant people say they make the food. I don't stand in lines. But a friend of mine had said, you should go and try this restaurant. Anyway, I got there, and there was a lineup. And the lady came to the front and said, you know what, there's a lineup, but give us your name. We move really fast and we'll get you in. And I thought, I've heard that before. Anyway, and this is exactly what they did. I just watched the way they were moving people through this business. Even though there was a lineup, it was amazing. Everything was, you sat down, somebody came to you, they asked you straight away what you wanted to drink, and then somebody else came to you and then brought you this and olives and whatever it is. Then somebody else came to you, and it just flowed so well. You could see they created a process, they created a system, they created a way of doing things. And I could just see by how happy the employees were, how it was working for them. Because the part you got to understand, which is very, very difficult for us early on in our business, because we believe that if we do the job, it gets done properly. The reality is that you can't scale a business if that happens. Your job, maybe not in the beginning, but as your business grows, is to lead and manage people. That is your most important thing. And I think I want you to understand this. JD's made a comment here. A few business owners that I have spoken to review the analytics from social media campaigns they run, which is, I think you should look at analytics of every single campaign you run, whether it's social or not, which is a good decision. None compare the info to their sales or ask customers how they found out about the business. And I think that's such an important thing, that when it comes to social, you want to know, ask a client, where did you hear about this? And if they say, well, we saw you on Facebook, or we saw you on TikTok, or we saw you on Instagram, then things are working. But if you don't know, I don't know. I think it can be an absolute waste of time and money. And I've said this to many business owners. But again, if you're measuring things, I was speaking to somebody that I mentored last week, and she says that she's getting brilliant results. And I said, how do you know that? She said, we're measuring the sales, that every single time we create a campaign, we're generating more sales. I said, well, that's brilliant. I said, keep spending the money if it's working. If it's not, you need to stop doing it. One of the ideas, which is a little bit controversial for some business owners, is I'll say to people, why don't you develop an operations manual? So I'll give you an example. I own a holiday home in Florida, and I often send people there, and they'll say to me, Andrew, what if I have a problem? What should I do? And I say to them, you're not going to have any problems. And they said, how do you know? I said, because when you get to my apartment, on the table, there's a binder. And in that binder, it's got all the answers to the questions. And it was really interesting. I stayed at somebody's house, a beautiful apartment, but they didn't have a binder. And it was just little things like I didn't know where to put the garbage. I didn't know where to get the key for the gate. So what I was doing is I didn't want to, because they let me stay in this beautiful 5-star apartment of theirs for free. I don't want to keep phoning them and saying, so how does this work and how does that? So it almost like, I don't want to say spoiled my holiday because this was a 5-star place I stayed in, but it made it a little bit inconvenient. If I got there and they had a set of instructions on the table, they would have solved, I wouldn't have to call them once. So that's always the way I think. Whenever I work on something, I want to put instructions in place very quickly. I don't want to waste hours doing instructions, but I want to put quick instructions in place so that things get solved. So in my case, my holiday apartments, you'll know who to phone, you'll know how the air conditioner works, how the coffee machine works, how the dishwasher works, how the washing machine works. All of those things, I've got instructions in this manual. So when you got a problem, if you got a problem with a drain, you phone Joseph and Joseph will resolve it. So everything's in that manual. And I want you to think about it like this for yourself. I want you to think about that if I'm on vacation, so let's go back to that vacation thing. If I'm on vacation and one of my employees has a problem, they don't know how to do something, they pick up the binder and the binder tells them how to do it. And I've got one of my favorite examples is somebody that runs a manufacturing business. And I remember when I first taught him this years ago, he was very skeptical. He said, I don't know, I'm in a creative industry. You don't want to structure things too much. I used to say to him over and over, I used to say, Ricky, if you want to let your business run without you, this is the only way to do it. And now I see, even over the holidays, he was away for 4 weeks. I thought to myself, geez, that's a long time to be away from your business. He said, no, I put in all the processes. So whether I'm there or not there, it runs just as well. And that's the way I want you to think about it. The other thing I want you to think about, which is very, very effective for, especially in the franchise industry, is checklists. They'll have checklists of how a hamburger gets made. They'll have checklists of how things get merchandised. They'll have a checklist of how promotions are set up. And the idea here is that if you get a new employee, you give them a checklist and they're capable of doing the job like an experienced merchandiser. Let's use merchandising as an example, because they just got to follow instructions. It's like baking. I mean, I'm not somebody that bakes regularly, but when I do, I use a recipe because then I know the cake will come out decent. If you don't use a recipe like some people do, they'll put a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And I see this in businesses. When I walk in, I can see it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It creates chaos. It creates chaos for your costing. It creates chaos for your flavors, all these things. So I want you to almost think of it like recipes. It's not a recipe, but I want you to think of it. One of my favorite examples is our cleaning checklist. So this is a checklist that I created specifically for a retail type business. So here's an example. On Monday, we're going to make sure that we dust the shelves. I can't see the writing, so I'm just going to lean a bit forward. We've got to dust the lamps. We've got to whatever, vacuum the floors, replace the garbage bags. Actually, I've just realized this was the system we used to use in our training center. And it was when I employed a new cleaner. And I thought to myself, I don't want to, cleaning, I adore cleaning people. If somebody cleans my home or my office or whatever it is, I really adore those people and treat them really special because that's something I hate doing. But if I want to make their life easier, I give them a system. And that's exactly what I do. Whether it's at one of my apartments or one of my businesses, I will use a similar checklist like this. Not exactly the same. I may cut and paste and move things around, but I'll do the same thing. But here's the advantage. So when we had this office, this specific one that I'm thinking about, my cleaning, the people that used to clean my office could go in anytime. Actually, I gave them a key to a lockbox. They would go in, they just look at the checklist and just do what they needed to do. If they needed any cleaning materials, they'd write it on the bottom. I'd get into the office and I'd know, we need more, whatever, Windex, whatever it is. So the system solves your problems. But let's look at merchandising. You know, if any of you have been in retail, merchandising is standard if you've been in retail before. You know, there are certain ways we merchandise, there are certain things. So those things that you do in your business, you want to just write down. Because if I'm your new merchandiser, I know that when I arrive at work, I've got to know that the shelves are stocked with inventory. I got to know that the shelves are clean. Because if you don't tell somebody that they need to wipe the shelf before they put merchandise, they'll just put the merchandise. I'm telling you, they'll just put the merchandise. And then you'll say, did you wipe the shelf? And they'll say, no. And you ask them why, they say, well, I didn't realize the shelf was dirty. Do you see what I'm saying? But if you train them early on saying, this is the way it gets done, that becomes their routine. They don't even have to think. They remove the cans off the shelf, they wipe the shelf, they put the product back on, because that's the way they were trained. So you teach people how to merchandise as well as you. And then as you go along, if they might say, you know what, I've got a better way of doing this, you say, sure, what is the better way? And then they tell you about the better way, and then you change the system accordingly. Another thing, I don't know if any of you do a lot of in-store promos, but I know when I was in retail, we used to do it every week. So there was a process. You needed to take the stock out, you needed to take the signs, the point of sale material, all of those things. So instead of memorizing things, you'd give it a list to the employee and say, you know what, it's Wednesday, we do in-store demos, here's the template. Eventually they memorize, you know, but in the beginning, you don't want them to memorize it. You want them to make sure that they go through the list and they check it. Also, if there's a problem, let's say, for example, I don't merchandise something wrong, properly or whatever it is, you can then go to me and say, listen, Andrew, but I gave you the checklist. Why didn't you use it? When it comes to your employees, when it comes to your backroom inventory, you want to create a system for all of these things. And once you do that, it's going to make your life easier. So let's just think of some of these systems you can use. You can create checklists, almost like recipes. Do this, and then that, then this, and then that. Or you can create checklists like a cleaning checklist that I created. It works brilliantly. I use checklists, for example, when I evaluate business plans. I don't have to memorize anything. I just go through the checklist and I tick off all the things that people have done, give them a mark for things, and it's done. So it's uniform. Everybody knows. Actually, a lot of these small business centers that I work with really like it, because then I give them standardized forms so they can compare every business to the other. Why? It's just simple. I create a checklist because it makes my life easier. Not because I like checklists, but because I like to make my life easier. The other thing you can do is create custom forms. You know, most things that we do in business, we repeat. And you don't want to be creating a new form every single dance. So you standardize things. We do that, for example, we bid on a lot of government projects, and we know the questions they always ask. One of the questions is, how long have you been in business? Do you have any references? What else do they ask? A bunch of things. You know, tell us about your company. We have all those things standardized. So when we do proposals or we do bids or whatever it is, we just cut and paste and we just put it in and we get our bidding on time every single time. Step-by-step instructions, you know, so that you can train your employees to be just as good as you. Software that automates processes. I mean, nowadays we get software for everything. I know with our email, it's all automated. I don't even have to think. It's all automated. It sends out things, gives me analytics, tells me what's going on, who clicked, who opened, whatever it is, the system's available. But, you know, before we used to have to do these things by hand. So sometimes finding technology that automates things makes your life so much easier. You know, one of the things I've realized, because I've been in business for a long time, how, you know, technology has just made our lives so much better as business owners. Because all of these things, I remember when I first started, these things used to cost us so much money. And often we never invested in them because we couldn't afford them. I mean, just think of any retail business now, they all got scanners. It's really easy. And some people have QR codes and whatever. All this technology is very cheap. That used to be very expensive. Maybe you're going to create a pre-approved vendor list. Just think of that. It'll take you an hour to do. Just sitting in front of your computer and say, here's a list of all our vendors. This is what we order from them. Let's put this thing into a binder and we'll call it approved vendor list or whatever it is. Any price lists. How many times have I been into businesses and they don't know what the price is. I know we have to ask the owner what the price is, or the manager's not here, we don't know. Just very basic little things that should be done. Written policies. Here's the thing you will learn very quickly with your employees. If you don't create written policies, what's going to happen is they just going to do whatever random things they want to be doing. And this is going to create chaos in your business. So maybe create a written policy about uniforms, about vacations, about sick days, all of those things, job description. You want to standardize as many things as possible. And then you want to put them in a place. It doesn't have to be a binder. It could be in a folder. I keep things on folders on my computer, and then I run my business from there. I can run my business anywhere in the world from my little laptop. It's a cheap laptop. I keep everything on the cloud, and it makes my life simple. So the idea here is to standardize. I mentioned it early on, but it's worth mentioning again. You want to run your business like a franchise. Whenever you go into a coffee shop, or into a burger place, or into a, I don't know, have your car repaired, and you see the way they do things, you think to yourself, how can I do that? And you realize that sometimes it makes more profit. Think if you ever had your oil changed in one of these Mr. Lube or whatever it is, it's so quick. You just go in, because they've standardized. You just go in, they ask you the same questions, they try and upsell you, you pay and you go. And you know what? That's very, very quick. Because they standardize it, it makes more profit. So that's the way I want you to think about it. You want to maybe standardize all your marketing, things like your uniforms, things like your logos, your company colors, your website. It needs to all look, your branding needs to be the same across the board. Otherwise, people get confused. Your store signage. I can't tell you how many times I walk past people's signage and it's dirty, or it's missing a letter or something like that. And I think, why do people do this? It just makes them look unprofessional. Your promotional materials. You want to standardize in your stores. So every single time you have a promotion, use the same sign, the same fonts, all those things. Your customer service guidelines. You want to standardize those things. It makes you look more professional. Maybe create a calendar, for your marketing with the month, what you're going to be doing, the theme, your budget, all of those things. Because then people want to know these things. You say, just use the template. It's very, very simple. When it comes to your sales, how are you going to generate leads? Or what's the sales training process? Do you train me how to be a better salesperson? You teach me what to ask, what to say, all those times. I had a very good example yesterday. My son bought a very expensive bicycle. But the sales experience was just so good. This guy started by telling a story, and eventually my son bought his bicycle. Anyway, develop a list of sales questions. Again, you standardize. So when you go out to see a client, you ask them the same thing, because customers customers have the same needs over and over again. And you ask the same questions over and over again. So instead of memorizing them, just write them out and then share them with other employees. Implement a lead tracking system, maybe a CRM system, and then train your employees regularly. These are things that you can do on an ongoing basis. Create an inventory management system for your business. You can do it manually. Most businesses nowadays have automated systems, but you want to do that. When it comes to your admin, for a lot of businesses, this is their biggest nightmare. It really is their biggest nightmare. I know I've seen businesses get frustrated, cry, whatever it is, because the administration. What you want to do is you want to create a procedure. So when I need to retrieve something, I know how to do it. That's what you want to do. And usually it means just creating labels. Your client details form, you need that information so you can communicate with them. Your bookkeeping processes, your passwords, your daily cashing up procedure, all of these things you want to standardize. I promise you it's going to make you more money. Your opening checklist, just write it down. Turn off the lights, add cash to the cash, clean counters, restock the shelves, face the shelves, add merchandise. All these things are standard, but you got to write them down so that everybody does it the same way. They don't forget to put on the sign, or they don't forget to turn the lights on, or to put the money in the cash register, or whatever it is, because they've got a checklist that they eventually memorize. When it comes to your people, you want job descriptions, you want an orientation program, you want questions that you ask everybody the same. You want standard performance reviews. All of these things are standard. And for those of you that have worked in large companies, these are things that are quite common, but that's the way they scale. They scale because they've got these systems in place. You don't want to make it too bureaucratic, so just be very careful of that. You want to keep them simple. You want to have standard bookkeeping procedures, guidelines for accounts receivable, petty cash. And you don't have to work on all of these things, but you want to start somewhere. Maybe start with the merchandising checklist, and then maybe come up with a cleaning checklist. Then maybe come up with a cash register list or whatever it is, but you want to do these things. I'm just going to summarize, and then I see that there's a question there, I'll answer it. So here's the key thing, is what I've shared with you today. The objective is for you to become organized, because if you become organized, you're going to have more time. If you're going to have more time, you're going to be able to market and sell more. I encourage you to, from now on, plan your day, plan your week, plan your year. It's going to make your life easier. You don't want to put too much structure in place, but you want to put some structure in place. Manage your time, learn how to manage your time, learn how to prioritize different things that need to be done. Create an operations manual with checklists and develop systems and processes. I believe for some of you on this webinar, and this is going to change your life. And you're not going to even realize it until you do it. And then you'll see that simple things become really, really important things. JD says, what do you believe are the most important parts of a checklist for a client care, complaints, returns? I think all of these things are important. When it comes to client care, questions we should ask, what's the follow-up process? All of those things are very, very important. And again, I don't know enough about your business to explain, but I'm sure if we had a pen and paper, we'd write a bunch of things down, and very, very quickly we'd have a system. And that's what I want you to understand, is what I'm speaking about is not complicated at all, not at all complicated. It's just that it creates a bit of structure. So that's what I'm recommending you do. All right, so just before I end off today's webinar, I just want to remind you, on Thursday, we're going to have a discussion and a mastermind. So if you haven't signed up for that, sign up for that. And then we're going to have a bit of a discussion. I'm going to share with you some stories about small business owners and how they've used systems and things like that. And more importantly, how you can use it, which is really the key. There's one more question here. Let me just check it. What is the best book to overcome past business failures and build self-confidence to grow and move forward? That's a really good question. And there's no simple answer for this. If I was to start a business again, and let's say I was struggling, instead of reading a book, I would hang around with other business owners. I was saying this to a group earlier today. I had the opportunity in September last year to walk in the north of Spain. We did a 124-kilometer walk with a bunch of business owners that I've known over the years. And it was so inspiring, because as we were learning, because when we started, none of us had any money, but as we were learning, we almost, I don't want to say used each other, but we almost helped each other, grow our businesses. So when, let's say I had a situation, let's call it a failure, I would go and speak to one of these other business owners. So if I was you, rather than reading a book, I would find a group of business owners, maybe 4 or 5 business owners that you work with, that you meet regularly, and you discuss some of the challenges you're going through in your life and your business. And I think that is the ticket to success. I really believe that. And I've used that for, I don't know, since the beginning of my business. And it really helped me to solve some really challenging situations that I don't know how to deal with. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Hopefully you learned something from me today. But here's the thing. This stuff only works if you do it. So start creating processes, start creating systems. And for some of you, it's going to change your life and improve your business. Thank you very much, everyone. I'll see you on Thursday, same time, same place.